Hey everyone, Derek Lalone from the Model Schools program here. And before we get started with today's presentation, which is creative ways to use Google Slides, I just want to go through some of the upcoming workshops that the Mohawk RIC is offering teachers for the remainder of the summer. So with that, I'm going to transfer over to our presentation. And first up, we have our upcoming live sessions. So these are the YouTube live sessions like the one that you're participating in today. And coming up, we have on July 21st, Interactive Notebook using Google Slides. Start Writing with Google Keep on July 22nd, which is Google's note-taking software. Using Technology for Authentic Assessments in the Elementary Classroom, that's July 28th at 10. Hacking G Suite with the Explorer tool on July 29th at 10. Digital Badging on August 18th at 1. Leveraging Nearpod in the Classroom on August 21st, and creating a virtual classroom with Google Sites on August 24th. So be sure to check those out. And the quickest way to get there would be www.moric.org/pd, and that'll take you right out to our My Learning Plan calendar. Next up, we have the virtual meetings. So these are run more in a Zoom/Google Meet format. Just for the sake of allowing you to be a little more participative and be able to, interact with the presentation that's going on a little bit more. So with that, we have Building Relationships with Students in an Online Environment on July 28th. We have Motivating Students in an Online Environment on July 30th. Maximizing Virtual Manipulatives in the Elementary Mathematics Classroom on August 4th. And that's it for our virtual sessions. So next up, we have our online courses. So a lot of these are ongoing. So we have our digital breakouts, Motivating Students with Technology, Google One Certification Prep, Choose Your Own Adventure. They're currently ongoing. Google Sites for Beginners has just started, so if you want to jump in on that one, feel free. But then the last two that we have here are Motivating Students with Technology and Google Sites More Than a Website. So be sure to check those out. And see if that's something that you're interested in as we're getting ready to start the school year here. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. There'll be a couple of us monitoring the chat, so we'll be able to answer your questions. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Heather Schaefer with Creative Ways to Use Google Sheets.
Hi everyone, I'm Heather Schaefer, a Model Schools Coordinator with the Mohawk Regional Information Center. Today we're going to talk about spreadsheets. Now, spreadsheets are a personal favorite of mine. I get so excited by spreadsheets, but not too many people share that joy with me, and many people that I talk to actually try to avoid spreadsheets at all costs. So today my hope is that I will help you to see some unique ways to use it, maybe something you've never thought of before, and things that will actually help you in the classroom. And that's across content areas. Some people are like, oh, spreadsheets are just for math folks. They're just for crunching numbers or making graphs. But that's just not the case. They can be used for almost anything. And they're actually my go-to for a lot of my document creation. So let's jump into some basic spreadsheet vocabulary just to kick us off before we get into the fun stuff. So as you can see, I have a spreadsheet on my screen here. And this is a Google spreadsheet, right? We're talking about Google Sheets today. So of course, just like with Google Docs and Google Slides and all those other fun Google apps, it integrates in your G Suite account. So you can put it as an assignment in Google Classroom and things of that nature. So when you look at a spreadsheet, it kind of looks like a grid, right? And so and a lot of people think of it like Battleship too, right? Because you have the alphabet, the letters across the top, you have numbers going down the side, and that's actually the way you name each of those boxes, and each of them is called a cell. And so right now you can see that my cursor is in cell A1, and that's how you would name it. All right, so each of those little cells is a place where you can put information. You can put text, you can put numbers, you can insert images, all sorts of things. So as you're working within a spreadsheet, remember that you have a lot of the same tools in your toolbar that you will find in some of your other G Suite apps too. So if you're typing text into a cell, for example, if I put the word hello in there, right? I can go up to my toolbar, I can change the color, the font, the size. I can choose if I want it to be centered within the cell. You know, if I had a paragraph of text, it's just going to go all the way across the page, so I might want to do some text wrapping, which you'll see applications for in a little while once we start using it. But you also have the ability to resize that cell. So all of these columns here have like lines in between them, and if you kind of hover over it until you see that arrow, you can drag it. And so if you have, you know, something that's really wide that needs to go into column A, you can drag it and make it wider. And the same goes with the rows as well. All right. These little bold lines right here that you'll find, and I'm not really sure if this box has an official name or not, but I call it the awesome box because when you click on it, it highlights everything in your spreadsheet. So that is important, you know, if you're formatting the entire spreadsheet and not just a single cell, you're going to want to make sure you're selecting the entire spreadsheet. So you can just click in that awesome box instead of dragging and dropping across the whole entire thing, which can be tedious depending on the size of your spreadsheet. But anyway, like I was saying, there's these thick lines right below, and that's just a really quick way to freeze your rows or your columns. So for example, if I was, you know, collecting some data and I wanted this top row here to be like a header, maybe I put like names, we're doing like a class list, right? Gender, I don't know, age, things like that, right? So I could just click and drag it, and you see that bold line now is underneath row A, and there's a bold line all the way across letting me know that that is frozen. So what does that mean? So if I go ahead and type some information and I keep going, see how I can scroll up and down, but row 1 never moves. It's like frozen there. So that's awesome because you might be scrolling through a lot of data. You might get down to like row 550 and then you're like, what was I looking at again? And if you have it frozen, you'll know, oh, I was looking at the names of my students, right? So anyway, there's other ways to do that in the menus as well, but that's just a really quick way to get there. Also, you can, you know, fill these so you can format them any way you want. And, you know, that's just some general stuff. If you're dealing with numbers, for example, if I put the number 5 in there, right? Maybe I'm talking about money. Well, there's some quick number formatting tools right here. So I could click the $sign and it'll change it into the format for money, $5.00. And then when you're getting more advanced, which we're really not going to get too much into today, you can go into format number and then you have like all of these plus more. So anyway, so that should give us a good foundation. You've probably, you know, seen spreadsheets, like I said, in like class lists or looking at student data, or a lot of folks have used Google Forms and have put the results of their Google Forms into a spreadsheet so that you can see it all in one place and you can sort it and filter it, and we'll talk all about that in a minute too. So let's jump into an example of how you might use a spreadsheet. And I'm actually going to do the non-math examples first, and then I'll jump into the math examples at the end. So the first one I'd like to show you is an idea that was created by Eric Kurtz. He runs a blog, and the reason I borrowed this from him is because he already had all the data in there. So it's a great way for me to showcase how to use some of the tools to look at the data and analyze the data, right? So in this case, we're looking at an example for an ELA class. All right, let's say you just finished reading the novel Wonder. All right, Eric has compiled some data from that novel about the characters. So maybe we're doing a character study. Maybe we need to know about the qualities of the characters. Maybe we're just using this to spark some discussion at the end of the novel, right? So here we can see that he has included things like age, gender, Is this person part of the main character's family? Are they nice? Are they mean? Do they change throughout the novel? And things like that. And then, of course, a place for notes here. So when you're looking at a large set of data, you probably want to look at pieces of it for different purposes, right? So there's two things you can do. You can sort and you can filter. And I'll show you each of them. So when you sort things, you're basically taking all of the data and reorganizing it according to whatever you're sorting by. So let's say, for example, we wanted to sort by age, right? We're going to go up to data and we're going to sort the sheet. And I said by J because my cursor was in J, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted it by B. So I'm going to put my cursor in B and I'm going to do that again. Data, sort by column B. And now you can see like all of the fifth graders got grouped together, all the adults, etc., the dogs. All right, so maybe that wasn't a good example, but you can see what I mean. It just took everything and reorganized it by that way. The other thing that you can do is you can filter. And so over here in the toolbar, there's a little filter icon, but also there was the create a filter right here in the data menu as well. So you can do it two different ways. And what that does is it puts these little drop-down menus at the top of each column. And when you click on it, like let's say I wanted to see only the people who are nice. When I click on it, I see all of the things that, all of the data that could be in those cells. So there are actually 4 different options, and there's check marks next to all of them. So right now I'm looking at everything. But if I only want to see the people who are nice, they will be the people with yes written in that column. So I'm going to uncheck no, question mark, and blank, and I'm going to hit OK. And now all of the people showing up have yes next to them. So these are all of the people that were nice during the novel. Now, maybe after I talk about that with the students, maybe we want to say, okay, were there any kids who were both mean and nice, right? And so I can go over here and I can do the same thing. I can check off the kids that say yes. So now you're filtering down even further and you can see that there are 5 kids who are both mean and nice. So you can have some really deep discussions about that. Like, you know, obviously they're all 5th graders. So why are these 5th graders being mean sometimes and then being nice sometimes? What does that mean? And it's just a really, really great way to start those conversations. So think with me for a moment here, like all the different types of data you could put in there. Like this is just one of millions of examples. You could put, not even thinking about book studies, thinking about other content areas. Maybe you're doing some kind of a science lab where you're gathering some data and putting that all in there. And then you can filter it by different categories, right? Maybe you're studying something from history and you really need to analyze it. But it's really hard if you're just like, you know, watching some videos and reading some information about it. Like it's just hard to really synthesize all of that information. But if you take it all and you put it into a spreadsheet and you manipulate it, it helps you to process and look for patterns and all of those things. And not just with math and not just with numbers, but as you can see here with words, with text, with anything. So really consider those sorting and those filtering tools within a spreadsheet to be like your best friend, right? When you're trying to get into those deeper, higher order thinking skills with your students, and you're not just, you know, looking at the data, but really analyzing it. All right, so let's go to the next example. The next example could be used when you're doing research. So one of my pet peeves is, you know, students today and with access to the internet, they like to copy and paste. They really do. And they really need to understand, you know, how they're breaking copyright and plagiarizing and all of that from a very young age. So this use of a spreadsheet is kind of like that in-between tool where they're doing their research and they're collecting that information. I remember, okay, let me back up for a second. When I was in 5th grade, I had to do a research project on an animal. And I remember we had to have little index cards and we weren't allowed to copy anything word for word and we had to write it all in our own words and everything. But we had to do it on index cards and then we had like a little file box and we had to go through them and organize them by like topic and subtopic and whatnot. So here, this is kind of like the same idea, but in a digital format, right? So since we want to give credit to where we got our information from and we need to cite our sources and all of that good stuff, it's a good idea to take the whole entire URL from any website that we're accessing. So you would copy and paste the URL into the source column in this spreadsheet, right? And since our students are doing it anyway, let's let them copy and paste chunks of text from those websites, but not into their research paper, into this spreadsheet. So here is what I've copied and pasted from this website that I think is important, and I put it in my spreadsheet for easy access. Now, here's the important part. Now I'm going to do that step where I'm taking that and I'm putting it into my own words and I'm really synthesizing the information and what's important. And I can write my summary here. And then just to help me, like I said with the last example I gave of the book characters, to be able to filter it and sort it, you can put subtopics, you could put keywords. You can change this template and put whatever you want, really. But if I'm doing a research project on the Civil War and I'm collecting a lot of, text evidence about slavery, maybe I want to put that as my subtopic. And then later on in my research process, when I'm getting ready to write that research paper, I filter it just to see the things about slavery. And then I put that into a paragraph or two or whatever, or a section of my research paper. So just some ideas. And that would be a really good way to keep everything in one place and to get that workflow for writing a research paper without the plagiarism. All right, so my next example is a website called Flippity.net, and you may have heard of it before, but basically this website, what it does is it takes stuff that you enter into a spreadsheet and it turns it into something fun. And there's lots and lots of different examples, as you can see. You can make flashcards, you can make a quiz show, you can do a random name picker. I'm not going to read these all to you, but you get the idea. So it's a really great way. Most of them are like some kind of a gamification of content. So if you're having your students like practice skills, this would be a way to do it. And it's all integrated with G Suite, which is the best because it's done through the spreadsheet. And again, you can have your students do these too, and you can distribute them through Google Classroom and whatnot. So I'm just going to show you one example today because actually another colleague of mine has done a webinar completely on just Flippity. So you can go and watch that in our archives. But I'm going to do a Mad Libs example just to show you another, ELA example. So the great thing about Flippity is that they always have a demo. So even if you're not really sure how to do it, just watch the demo and the instructions, and then they give you a template, which I'm just going to jump to the template right now. So they have you make a copy of their template. And pretty much with all of the Flippity templates, you're just putting in whatever the information is, and then you're publishing it to the web, and I'll show you that in action, and then you're getting the link and sharing the link with whoever, right? Whether your students or maybe your students are creating these and sharing them with each other. So for this one, since it's Mad Libs, you have the title of the story at the top, and you can see if I scroll, there's 50 slots. So you can even have your students do this collaboratively. You can all add them to this document and have them create their own stories. Or you as the teacher can create them and have them, fill them out. But I think that, like I said with that deeper thinking, the higher order thinking skills, you probably want your students creating them so that they can practice their different types of words, right? So you have like your nouns, your adjectives, whatever. So parts of speech, that's the word I was looking for. So let's say I like snow. So I'm going to call mine snow, right? And I won't do a whole one. I'll just do a sentence or two, but whatever you want the end product to look like, wherever you want the blank, you have to put it in a bracket. So I'm going to start off with a name. So I want them to fill in the name, close bracket, and we'll say another name. Went on vacation in the winter. They loved snow so much that they, and we'll say verb. Actually, we'll say past tense verb. They, I don't know, jumped. Every time they heard the word snow. I don't know. All right, so now when you go over to the, see at the bottom, I didn't mention this earlier, there's different tabs along the bottom in a spreadsheet, and you can create new ones and things like that. So for this template, there's a tab that says get the link here, but it says, wait, don't forget to publish it, right? So publishing it basically, and this is with docs, slides, anything, you can publish it to the web, which just makes it public and makes it in like a presentation type document. So file, and then publish to the web. And it didn't tell me I had to do anything specific with any of this information, so I'm just going to hit publish. Yes, I want to publish. All right, so now it's published. So now it says that if I get this link here, I can use it and I can give it to whoever I want to fill out my Mad Libs. So I'm just going to copy the link, and I'm going to open up a new tab here and paste that link. So this is what it looks like. So basically somebody who is like a magician with spreadsheets did some formatting to take all of the information from the spreadsheet and turn it into something pretty. So here's the one I just created, snow. These were the ones that were in there as an example. And so I can say, I'll put my kids' names in there, Max and Ethan, I don't know, jumped. Show me my story. And here it is. Max and Ethan went on vacation in the winter, and they loved the snow so much they jumped every time they heard the word snow. So anyway, I think your kids would really have a fun time if they're practicing their parts of speech to create their own Mad Libs, and it's a really simple way to do it. So that was an example from Flippity, and again, don't forget, there's so many different ones that you can do in here. All right, so now let's move on to something different. Let's talk about that math, because we all know that you can use spreadsheets and formulas and scary things to do math in here. So one real world example that I think is lacking with a lot of our younger kids, not younger as in like primary grades, but like non-adult, young adult, I don't know, people, is the checkbook register. And I know a lot of people will say, well, we don't really use checks anymore, and that's okay. It's still the same concept if you're doing anything with a bank account, right? You need to know how much money you have in your bank account. So for this one, and I'll show you kind of like the formulas that I used because they're very, very basic. So I just created a column for the date, the checks, the transactions, deposits, and then I have the total deposits, and then withdrawals, the total withdrawals, and then the total, which is what my bank account balance is, right? So these, what I did was I highlighted column D and just made it green with the fill color. Just that signifies in my head that's money going in, right? And withdrawals, I did the same thing and made it red. And then the total I just made blue just so it stands out. So as you go in and you enter data, maybe maybe I didn't write a check today, but maybe I had to get groceries, right? And maybe I spent $100. I don't know. I'm making it up. But as I enter that information, it automatically calculates or recalculates these numbers up here based on the formulas that I use. So let's take a look at what that means. So when I clicked on this cell here, I knew I wanted a total of all the deposits that I've ever made. So if you look up here in the formula bar, what I did is I typed in sum, which is the formula for adding up all of the numbers, right? And then I put in the cell names. So it goes D3, right? Because D is this column here, starting at row 3, right here, and then a colon. So that's saying everything in between D3 and whatever. And then I did D1000 because there are actually 1000 rows in this spreadsheet. So I wanted to calculate every single cell in that column. All right. And so anytime you're starting or using a formula in a spreadsheet, you always want to start with an equal sign. And I'll do it over here just as an example. And whatever you type in will have to follow whatever format. So I knew that I wanted the sum, which is adding it all up. And then it starts, you can see on Google, it starts to kind of give you help of like what options are available. But I just want the simple sum. And then you have to say what you want the sum of. So you open up those parentheses and it's saying, okay, you can either put values in there, you can put a range of cells in there, and I wanted the range of cells. So D3 colon D100 close parentheses. And now once I hit the enter button or the return button on my keyboard, that formula will disappear out of the cell and the actual sum will appear. So I'm going to do that. And there it is. And if I need to know that formula, I just click on it and look up here and I can see that. Okay, so basically I did the same thing here. And then over here, what I did is I just took, as you can see up here, D2, which is my deposits, minus E2, which is my withdrawals. So I took all my deposits minus all my withdrawals, and that is my total bank account. Simple as that. Alrighty. So there's some basic formulas for you, and I'm not going to get too much into that because I want this to really be like a beginner course for spreadsheets. Alright, so we're going to now jump into some graphing. Now, yes, spreadsheets graph things automatically for you, but that's not where we're starting, okay? We're going to start with a very cool hands-on example that you could use with even your smallest students because they need to be able to manipulate things in order to understand them. Once they get older, then they can have the spreadsheet automatically create the graph for them. But when they're younger, they need to create it for themselves. So, and I'll break this down for you and show you how it's done. But as you can see, there's a fishbowl. And so they're going to be dragging fish into the fishbowl and creating like a fish scene, right? And then they're going to graph it. So basically how this was created is you would put a Google drawing in here. And so you can go to Insert, Drawing, and create whatever here. So in this case, it was a fishbowl. So we went to Pictures, and we probably went to, Search, and put fishbowl, right? And you get the idea. So there's your fishbowl. Oh, and we probably, before we even did that, we probably should have made the background a color. But anyway, I'm not going to do this whole thing. I just want to show you really quickly how you would go ahead and get your fish, because you need multiple fish, right? Up to 10 because our graph went up to 10. So let's say this is the fish that I wanted. Basically what I would do is I would make them really tiny and put them outside of the bowl. And then I would copy and paste. And I would do that 10 times so that I had 10 fish. But then I would use the arrow keys on my keyboard to move him exactly on top of the other one so that it only looks like I have 1 fish, but there will actually be 10. And then when the student drags them, it looks like it's making copies of the fish, right? Okay. So I'm going to hit save and close, but I actually don't want that. So I'm just going to highlight it and delete it. Okay, so let's go in here and we'll do the same thing. We'll do blah, 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 blah. All right, so you get the idea. So then I have, and it takes a second to generate the picture, so have your students be patient. Then I have 2 red fish, so all I have to do is type anything into the cell by the red fish, and it will turn a different color. So I have 2, so I'm going to do 2 there, and I have 3, and I have 1, and I have 1. All right, so you might be thinking to yourself, well, okay, that's cool, but how the heck did you do that, right? So that is done with what's called conditional formatting. So what I would do here, and you can, highlight the cells ahead of time, or you can just use the naming convention when you do it, like this would be N2 to Q11. But you go up to data, format, and go down to conditional formatting, and it will open up this sidebar here for conditional formatting rules. So now you can see there are 4 rules, and I'll just open one to show you how it works. So they did the cell range, right, because that's where it's being applied, and if the cell is not empty, and you can see there's lots of different ways to conditionally format, but in this case it's if the cell is not empty, which means that the students can basically type anything in the cell and then it will change color. And what do you want that cell to do if it's not empty? Well, for this one, we want it to turn red. So we want to make the text red and the fill color red. And the reason for that is because if I type an X in that cell, I don't want to see the X. I want it to disappear. So if I make the background the same color as the text, it looks like there's nothing there, right? So as you can see, for N, which is right here, we're doing red. For O, we're doing green. For Q, we're doing blue. And for P, we're doing orange. And that's just so that the colors on the graph match the color of the fish. All right. Now, over here, we have an area where the students can then take that information from the graph and start creating number sentences with it. And so, how many red fish and green fish do you have? I have 2 red fish and I have 3 green fish. And then I need to write an equation in the box to represent it. So 2 plus 3 equals 5. All right, and you get the idea. So how did I take a simple spreadsheet where all of my rows and all of my columns and all of my cells essentially are the same size and make it look pretty like this, right? Well, all you're doing is you're resizing your rows and columns and you're merging them. So notice over here, for example, how it says fish in my bowl. Normally that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cells. So I would highlight those cells, we'll just pretend these are the cells, and I would go up here to merge cells, and boom, it makes them 1. Now I'm going to hit my undo button because I didn't actually want to do that, but I wanted to show you that. So basically we merged all of the cells behind the fishbowl here, and then we formatted them to be filled with blue, and that gave you, when we put the drawing on top of it, that gave you that nice little blue border there. And basically here we took the whole column R and made it blue, just so that the graph in the middle is white and it stands out. The other question that you might have is, how did we get the fish into the cells, right? Like that down here. So to do that, you would go to Insert, Image, Image in Cell. You can put it over the cell, but for this case, we want it in the cell. And I don't have any fish images on my computer, so I'm not uploading, so I'm just going to see what I can find in Google Images. And I'm probably not going to find the exact ones they had, but anyway, pick one, hit Insert, and there it is. All right, so that's pretty simple. Now, let's say you are working with older students and you want them to make that connection between something like this and then the power of making charts in a spreadsheet and having the spreadsheet do the work for you, right? So I'm just going to click the plus sign down here to make a new tab. And I'm going to take the information from here, red, green, orange, blue, and I'm just going to type that here, red, green, orange, blue, and then let's see, it was 2311. So 2311, and you'll notice that I started in row 2 because I want my headers to go in row 1. So I'm going to call this colors and number, actually I should use capital letters, number of fish. Oops, can't type today. All right, so then if you want to create a chart, you just highlight the data you want in your chart and you click the little chart icon in the toolbar. And so it will automatically generate something for you, which may or may not be what you want, but then you just use the chart editor off to the right to make it look the way you want it. So if you wanted a bar chart, this would be great, but let's say you didn't. Let's say you wanted a column chart. You can just switch it, and you can see there's lots of different kinds of charts that you can create, right? And then, so it says number of fish over here because I put that as my column header, and then it says colors here because I had that as my column header. And then it took all of that information and graphed it for me. Now, I don't like this title, number of fish versus colors. That makes no sense to me. So I can do one of two things. I can either click on it here and just type it, or I can, go through here and go to customize, go to chart and axis titles, make sure I'm on chart title, and change it here. Obviously, it's probably easier to do it there, but I'm going to call this, what did we call it over here? Fish in my bowl, right? So, fish in my bowl. And you could probably spend hours just customizing your graph. There's lots of different things you can do. You can change the font, you can change the color, I don't know. You can change the background, and you can always go back in and edit it too. So I'm not going to spend time doing that, but just know that those options are available. And also notice you have options here as well. So you can actually move it to its own sheet so that it's not kind of like hovering here on top of your spreadsheet with your data. I'm actually going to do that. All right, so now it's bigger and easier to see. Right? And things like that. Then you have up here the same options you had before. All right, so that's a little bit about graphing, inserting drawings, inserting images, merging cells. We're getting some skills down now. All right, let me show you a little fun tip. So this next spreadsheet looks pretty much the same as the one that I just showed you, right? Except now I took that and I turned it into a collaborative activity. Because remember, this is a Google Sheet, and in G Suite we can always collaborate on our documents. So let's say you wanted your students to work together on this. Maybe it's a center activity or something like that. So what I did is I renamed the tab down here at the bottom. So I clicked on the little drop down arrow and went to rename. And I put the names of the students that I wanted to work together in a group as the name of that tab. Then I also added a new row underneath the fish, because if you remember from before, there were just the fish down here along the bottom. Now there are names. So Brian knows that he has been assigned to the red fish. Okay, so Brian goes in and he drags however many red fish in he wants. He fills in his chart and he goes over here and he says, I have one fish. And once all of his partners have done their part, then they can write their number sentences together. All right, and some students might even come in here, like let's pretend for a minute that the person, Jordan, who had the green fish didn't do their part yet. Maybe they were absent, I don't know. But you get the point. They can even go in here and just leave it blank or put a question mark or an underscore or something just to notify or just to show that they knew what they were doing. They knew that they had to add there. They knew they had to have an equal sign there. They just don't know what that other number is. All right, and you can have as many tabs along the bottom as you want. So these 4 students are doing it together. These 4 students are doing it together. And you, in order to get a new tab with all of the same information, you just click on the arrow and you go to duplicate. So I'll do it again. And then I go to rename, delete the names, put in the names of the new students, go up here, delete the names, put in the names of the new students, and there we go. So lots of different options here, but we're not done yet. Let's keep going. Pixel art. Pixel art is my all-time favorite thing to do, just because there's so many different ways you can use it, and it's fun. Who doesn't love creating pixel art? All of our Minecrafters, you know, love it, especially because they're used to using pixels in the Minecraft game, but anyone can have fun with this, and we can use it to help practice skills as well. So let me show you what I mean. So there's a couple different templates I'm going to share with you today. This one particularly was created by Eric Kurtz, right? And so in his template, he has created a bunch of tabs along the bottom. Oh, and by the way, I will share all of these templates with you in the chat. So be sure to click on the link when it pops up in a second. So in the first one, it's just your basic drawing, right? And he put in this little key at the top here so you know what the colors are. And so if I wanted pink, for example, I would use the letter F. So I'm going to type F, and when I hit return, it changes to pink. So I'm not going to draw a whole picture here, but you get the point. If I'm making a flower, maybe I want L for my stem, and so on. So that's just fun. You can use it for pretty much anything. But what if we then take it to the next level, and I'm going to switch tabs here and go to the fractions 8 by 8. So on this, this slide, you can see there is an 8 by 8 grid here. And as I start to fill it in, and I'm not going to be creative, I'm just going to do the same thing I did before, you can see how many boxes, right? So let me just do a couple more. So that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, so I have 12 pink boxes. So over here, I go in and I write 12. Well, what is that as a simplified fraction, right? So now we're starting to bring in those math skills along with the fun of making these pictures as well. So we have the same for 10 by 10 and 12 by 12, and then we also have area. So I love how it shows square units here, because a lot of times when we're talking about area, the students forget that, so it's like a good visual reminder. So again, so I have 4 square units. So that's Eric Kurtz's idea. Then I've read the book Google Apps for Littles, and I actually did a whole book study with it that some of you may have participated in. So some of this might look like a repeat to you, but in that book, Christine Pinto has this idea of using pixel art for hidden pictures. And so I wanted to pull up her example first to show you kind of how it works, and then I'll go backwards and show you how to make one. Okay? So here you can see these students are practicing their addition and their subtraction facts. So they would just go in and they would click in there and they would answer it. So 2 plus 4 we know is 6. So I type in 6, hit enter, and it turns purple. So the idea is that you do that for all of them. And at the end, you should have a picture. Now, of course, if you answer the questions wrong, the picture is not going to make sense, right? So anyway, let's take a look at the next one. So here is the hidden picture template. And I know it looks a little different than this one because the key is on the top instead of the side, but it's still the same idea. So, let me get rid of Flippity. Okay. So what you would want to do when you're creating your own, and by the way, there is a tab down here at the bottom with the directions and her blog posts. So if you want to watch a video of her doing this, you certainly can. So basically what you do is you come onto the hidden picture tab and you just make your picture. So let me do something, again, I'm going to keep it kind of simple just for an example. And then once you're done with your picture, you just duplicate the tab. So again, you go down to the drop-down menu by the name of the tab at the bottom, and you go to duplicate. And you can see that now you have copy of hidden picture. So I'm just going to rename that to equations. And now I'm going to start to type in there. So the thing to remember is that the answer has to be the number that matches the color. So since this is pink, it needs to be the number 7. All right, so 7. So what can I do that does 7? Oh, 5 plus 2. And then you don't see it as you're typing it because it's still pink, but as soon as you hit enter or return, it will change for you. So you keep going like that. So what's something else that would be 7? Oh, 8 minus 1, right? And so on and so forth. I'm not going to do the whole thing. Then what you do is you actually duplicate it again and you rename it solve. And now you remember this will be all equations. You won't see any color here. And you will hide the other tabs so that whoever you're giving this to figure out what your hidden picture is won't know what the answer is, right? So you click here on equations and you go to hide sheet and you go to hidden picture and you go to hide sheet. And now your friend will just see solve and they'll be able to go in and they'll be like, oh, 5 plus 2 is 7. Oh, it's pink. 8 minus 1 is 7. Oh, it's pink. And then, you know, they can always check their answer, but by looking at the hidden sheets. So they would be hiding right here. So they can go to hidden picture and be like, oh yeah, I got it right. Also, the picture should make some kind of sense too. So anyway, so we talked about some vocabulary for Google Sheets, right? We talked about cells, rows, columns, all of that stuff. We talked about, let's go back through. We talked about filtering. We talked about sorting. We talked about using it for higher order thinking skills when we're analyzing our data, right? We talked about using it to take notes for research with the whole copy and pasting and keeping track of all of our sources so that we can do that attribution at the end and make sure that we give everyone credit for where we got all of our information from. We talked about Flippity and all the different cool templates that you can do in there using spreadsheets to make games and other sorts of fun things. We talked, sorry about that. We talked about a checkbook register or even just like a bank account, keeping track of your bank account and what, how much money you have in your bank account. And we talked about simple formulas such as sum. We talked about adding and subtracting and things of that nature. Then we jumped into using some cool formatting. Oh, and again, I didn't talk in here about like when I typed my text in here, I changed the size and the font and all of that fun stuff. But some cool formatting along with inserting pictures and Google Drawings to create some fun math manipulatives for our little guys, as well as having Google Sheets graph for you as well for maybe some of our older guys. Then we talked about how we can make it collaborative. And then we talked about pixel art and all of the great applications for pixel art, including fractions as well as your math practice with your different adding and subtracting. You could also use this for multiplying and dividing. You'd probably need some more bigger numbers in there if you were doing that, but it's super simple to do that. And remember, it's just conditional formatting. That's all that is. So if you had like 10 numbers and you needed 50 numbers, you would just click on your awesome box, go to conditional formatting, and you will see all the ones that are already created, and you would just go to create another one. So if it is the text is exactly 11, right, because we did up to 10, then I want it to be, let's see, we have light colors, let's do dark blue. And we do both the text and the fill for dark blue and hit done, right? And then we'd have to go over here and add to our key. So I'd type in 11 and boom. And you would just keep doing that until you had all the colors you needed for all the numbers that you needed for the answers to your math problems. So anyway, there's like a million more things I could talk about, but I only have limited time with you today, so I'm going to stop here. I have already shared all of these templates with you to get you started, but I also showed you some of the background of how to tweak it so that you can be creative and make your own things as well. So if these specific templates maybe don't work for you for your grade level or your content area, you can just take the ideas and run with them and tweak them to meet your own needs. So I hope you enjoyed this, and if you have any questions, just type them in the chat. I'd be happy to answer them for you. And if you want to take a deeper dive into spreadsheets, I'd love to do that as well. So you can always email me at hschaefer@morrick.org. Have a great day, everyone.